Hello and welcome to another episode. Jesus Christ. Hel- Hello and welcome to another episode of Acceptable Madness. My name is Scott McKinney, and Alex is listening in and repeatedly making me screw up. So I'm just gonna leave this one in this episode. uh, Today I'm gonna talk about something that I typically have a hard time figuring out and a hard time dealing with because it's it's kind of the whole point of why people struggle with some mental illness and depression, and that's finding joy in the little things. So I'm talking about it for this episode. I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about today, but as I sat down and was like, well, I need to record a podcast, and I have no fucking clue what I'm going to talk about. I had a lot of stuff in this past week that has needed to get done. Actually, in the past 2 weeks even, I have moved from one apartment to another one. I have traveled 3.5 hours by myself each way to Columbus, Ohio. So that's a lot of driving. I've seen some family, which I'm happy to have done that, seeing it on Alex's side and my side. And, I'm happy to have done all that stuff. But at the same time, I was incredibly stressed because I had this nagging feeling in the back of my head where I felt like I needed to be doing something more productive. And I don't know if that's just, a symptom of how I act and deal with depression, which is becoming a classic over-explainer and overworker and workaholic and all that stuff. So for me, if I don't have time to sit down and read a book or write or record my podcast in a timely manner or work on a YouTube video or create something, I start to tweak out a little bit. Like I freak out. I think about all of the stuff that I could be doing instead of the things that I am doing. Along with all these other like extra things like traveling and seeing people that I don't get to see all the time, I have also, I'm still maintaining a job, even though I took a few days off just as like a mini vacation for myself to go and help Alex move back after her internship. Before that, I still had other work. I worked 7 days in a row. And for the longest time of my entire life, and something I've still been struggling with, is trying to find the joy and happiness and just the pleasure in everyday things. And that is such a hard thing for me to do because I'm always stuck on, I could be doing this, which is more productive, or I could be writing or editing and pursuing my writing career, or trying to become or working to market my podcast better and reach out to a larger audience, or making a video that I can post somewhere and hopefully get some clicks and some views and stuff like that. And I always just get stuck in my head whenever I'm not working on that. And so for this past week, I really haven't had a time to do any of that. I have been able to read a lot because I was away from my computer. I found like an hour total to write over the past week, which really is not a lot for me compared to what I like to do. But so generally what I was doing was not what I would ideally like to be doing. But instead of stressing myself out, I really tried to focus on realizing like this is all stuff that needs to get done. It's not a big deal. And I tried to focus on the fact that what I was doing is not necessarily like unfun and it's not boring. And again, it's stuff that all needs to get done. So instead of sitting there and overthinking myself to death and going, well, shit, I could be doing all these other things that could bring me more happiness and could maybe even create a future writing career, or I could become a small-time influencer and have fun that way and communicate with people in that kind of medium. Instead of thinking about that, I really just tried to focus on what was enjoyable in the moment. And that led me to actually really enjoy the past few days off that I've had, and I didn't get in my head as much as I usually do. And I don't know why this particular vacation felt so different for me, or why I felt so much more comfortable to find the joy in it. I don't know if it's just me maturing and becoming a bit more familiar with my brain and how it works, and getting a better grip on what I want and what needs done, and being realistic about my expectations of the world. I really have no idea what caused the specific mindset that I had. But it was one that made me, instead of dreading the past 5 days where I may have a year or two ago, I really looked forward to them. And then while I was out in Columbus, I found time to read, and I didn't get held up with the fact of like I could be doing other stuff, and I really just took time to appreciate what I was doing. So one of those days was Alex's birthday, and I was able to spend time with her, and we had a good time. And she still had to work, but I tried to make her time after she got off work more enjoyable, and we played games together and just spent time together that we haven't been able to really do in the past month. And then another day, because she was at the end of her internship, she actually went out to dinner with her coworkers, and one of her roommates wasn't as comfortable having someone unfamiliar to her in the apartment while she was there, and the person, so like she didn't really want Alex's boyfriend, being me, to be there without Alex, because that would have made her feel uncomfortable. And I could have just stowed away in Alex's room and not made a peep for like the 5 hours after her roommate would have gotten home from work, but I didn't personally feel comfortable doing that to this person who lives there, and I don't want to make them uncomfortable. But instead of stressing myself out about, I have to leave and go keep myself busy for the next like 7 hours or whatever, I just kind of found different things to do and tried to have fun with them. And one of those things was I went to a park, and I actually, while I was there, it started raining, so that kind of sucked. But I walked around and played Pokemon Go and got into a gym and played with that for a little bit. And then after it started raining, I ran back to my car and I drove back to the main building at the apartments that Alex lived in, and I just took out a book that I hadn't started. I had just finished Zodiac, about the Zodiac Killer, the night before, and I started reading Catch Me If You Can by Frank Abagnale Jr., and I read like 150 pages out of the less than 300-page book, and I had fun with it, with every second, and I didn't worry about the fact that I was in this unfamiliar lobby, or that I could have been doing something else, or that I'm far from my computer, or I could have been typing. I really just tried to enjoy the story that was being told by Frank, and how fucking convoluted and mesmerizing his life was. And, which, excuse me, it's a book that I haven't finished 100% yet, but I'm within like 50 pages of the end, and I hope to finish it in the next day or two. And highly recommend it. It's a really fun read if you're into that kind of stuff. There's a movie based on it too, with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, and so even if you're not a big reader, I recommend the movie, because that's actually what I saw first, and it was a wild ride. But I did all these things, and I went to a restaurant by myself because Alex was out with coworkers, and I'd never really, I don't know if I've ever gone to a restaurant by myself, or at least not in recent memory. And I went out there, and even though it was a little bit weird trying to overcome that feeling of kind of insecurity going out to a restaurant by myself, and wondering with the wait staff or my waiter, the person that seated me, like what they were thinking. I just went and I sat down, and I knew exactly what I was going to get, because my judge of how good a pizza place is that I've never been to is just ordering a plain cheese pizza. And so I sat down. He asked what drink I wanted. At the same time, I got water in this pizza, and then I had like 3 one-word interactions with the waiter, and I just spent the dinner by myself. And it was a really relaxing experience, allowing myself to go out in public and not stress out about what other people were thinking, or kind of I don't know, just what other people. It's weird to be a lone person out eating pizza by myself at like prime dinner hours. It feels like that should be weird, at least. But I know people that have they're comfortable like going to watch movies by themselves in like a movie theater, and that's something that I feel more comfortable doing now, and I feel like that could be a really relaxing experience if the people that I was going to go with, or if say I have something scheduled and the people that I'm going to go with bail or they cancel last minute, like I'd still feel comfortable going by myself instead of rescheduling necessarily. So that was something that a few years ago I would have felt incredibly uncomfortable, and truth be told, I probably just would have stayed back and not eaten that night and just been hungry. But I felt comfortable to go out and not worry about the money that I'm spending eating out, even though that's typically more expensive than cooking myself. And instead, I just had a relaxing time, and then I came back. And by the time I got back, I went out and sat out by a pool that the apartment complex had. I kicked off my shoes, put my feet in the pool water, and continued reading a little bit. And it was, again, just a really enjoyable time. And it's cool to know, like, that I can go and kick my shoes off and put my feet in the water. And to so many people, that seems like a really relaxing thing. But for me, for so long, I thought of it as such a waste of time, or just boring or unenjoyable or too far from what I should be working for. And it was always really hard to distance myself from all these expectations and promises that I made for myself and set for myself. Like, it can really, a lot of the time that I took the joy out of an experience, it's all self-induced. Like, whenever I'm relaxing, whether I'm playing video games or any game, or like say I'm playing with some of my guy friends like Trevor and Danny, who have been on this podcast, say I'm playing video games with them, I will like find reasons to not enjoy it because I'll stress myself out, be like, well, I know I'm doing this, but really this is a waste of time. I should be working on writing and editing and sending out to agents and trying to build my brand, because no agent wants to sell a book for someone that doesn't have some sort of a following, because then they can't make as much guaranteed money and all that stuff. And it's stuff that I don't know why I was doing it to myself, but it was starting to wear on me. And all of these things that I used to find incredibly fun and relaxing became chores. And having things that you love turn to chores is a really, really unfortunate thing. And so having this short vacation and finding a way to enjoy it, where one day I went out and I just pulled the chair out back where she had a little like cement patio type thing. It wasn't anything fancy, but there was a little pond right next to it. So I was still reading Zodiac at that point, and I went out and kicked my shoes off, and I relaxed a little bit. And a bunch of baby ducks walked up, and they were pretty well accustomed to humans. So they just walked straight up to me and laid down next to me. And I got a lot of pictures that I posted on Instagram, and I just thought they were cute. And two of the babies actually walked up and nipped my toes, and I don't know why, but it was relaxing. Like, I didn't think that I was going to be comfortable sitting out there and relaxing and enjoying the sun early in the morning while a duck bit my toes. Like, that's not what I thought I'd be doing. And if I was too distracted by what I felt I should have been doing, I, instead of thinking of this little baby duckling and going, oh, that was cute, like, this is a fun experience, and nature is kind of cool, and I don't always get to experience it just because of how life works out. I could have experienced it like, God, this, man, I can't deal with this right now. This duck is obnoxious. Like, I just want to be left alone. I need to do work. Like, I need to get out of here. And those are completely, like, possible thoughts, because I've had them before, where something that should be a really happy, cathartic, relaxing experience can just turn into this agonizing thing just because of what picture I've painted for myself of what I should be doing. And it's just so weird how I can be so self-sabotaging, but also, and then be aware of how self-sabotaging I can be in terms of my mood and what I find joy in, but also have a really, really, really hard time dealing with that and kind of overcoming it. It's so strange, but the reason that I brought it up here is I know it just sounds like I'm talking about my week, and I mean, I am. I'm just talking about what I enjoyed from it, but being able to find joy in these things, these uncontrollable circumstances, like having to go help someone move, or having to go to dinner by yourself, or just sitting outside and finding some time where you can relax and do what you want to do in that moment, which is, for me, reading a book and letting a baby duck nip my toe. Being able to to look at those experiences as what they are, which are potentially relaxing and fun experiences, and that like the introspection that I had while sitting at that restaurant by myself was very different from any sort of thought process I'd ever really had before that. Like I'd never really thought about how I would feel being in a restaurant by myself. I went not really thinking about how I would feel. I just went because I knew I needed dinner and didn't want to just order it because I didn't want to make Alex's roommate uncomfortable. So it just kind of happened how it did, but I just, the things that I thought, and I was curious about what other people were thinking, but then just kind of letting those thoughts disappear and fade into nothing as I watched some boring ass preseason football. It was just a really different experience that I never thought I'd have. And I know that there's going to be so many more times in my life where stuff like this happens, where a family event or gathering or something will come up, and it may not be at the most convenient time, or there may be other things that I plan on doing, but trying to find the happiness in those events is really important to just general happiness. And I never know when I'm going to have to help someone move. I never know, like, if a particular friend is going to be in town at some point. I never know what kind of plans I'm going to have that'll be changing. I'm never going to know how much driving I may have to do. Like, I had to drive over the past 5 or 6 days. I've had to drive probably like 15 total hours, maybe less, maybe more. I don't know. And that's a lot of driving. And I promise you I didn't love every second of it, but just sitting back and trying to appreciate it as opposed to looking at it as a chore, which that is very hard for me because I don't like driving that much. And so that's something I need to work on. But even acknowledging that I have to work on it is a step in the right direction, as opposed to just accepting that it's this abysmal, boring, terrible, back pain-inducing thing, and trying to look at it as like, okay, well, now I'm going to see these places, even these stretches of road that I may have never seen before, knowing that that's a necessary thought process or a change. It kind of makes, it can make every little bit of life a little bit more enjoyable. And man, when you think about killing yourself on a pretty regular basis, anything that you can do to make your life a tiny bit more enjoyable is worthwhile and necessary, because life can be a real bitch sometimes. So if you can find happiness and relaxation in some things that maybe a year or two ago you looked at as absolutely awful, then it changes your whole perspective. And I don't mean to say that it'll be easy at all, because it's certainly not. Man, if I knew how to do it, then I would have done it the second I started having these suicidal thoughts, and it just wasn't going to happen. This change in thought process is very new to me, and I've been struggling with suicidal thoughts for a very long time now. And so it's something that it takes constant effort, and it takes a lot of introspection and really thinking about how my mind works and how I could be thinking differently and more positively without blaming myself whenever I can't feel that way. So there are times where I can't overcome the unfortunate truth or the unfortunate thoughts or these intrusive thoughts that are coming to my brain. There are sometimes where I can't look past them and I can't find the joy in everything. And I don't blame myself for that. I just kind of accept it as fact, and then I try harder next time it happens, and I try to remember how I was thinking or how I was feeling in that particular moment, and how I can adjust next time so that I'm not just beating myself up all the time. And I find the practice of really thinking about how you feel and letting yourself be vulnerable. You don't even have to let yourself be vulnerable to other people. Like, I don't have to go out and tell everyone that I'm related to that I'm having these suicidal thoughts. But if you need to allow yourself to be vulnerable within yourself, if that makes sense. Like, I've had a really a significantly easier time increasing my overall happiness, not necessarily by going out and talking to a therapist or even confiding in my friends, although both of those things do help a lot. But I think the main thing that has really helped me is kind of thinking about how I feel about particular situations. There are times where I may not think in the most reasonable way, um, and I'm really like caught up on something, but allowing myself to realize like, okay, well, maybe I'm not thinking how other people are, and maybe I'm having these suicidal thoughts, but maybe there's a deeper reason for it. And if there's not, maybe it's just worth thinking about why I'm having them in the first place and how I could maybe prevent them in the future. And instead of looking at these suicidal thoughts as like a temptation, which I really hope it's not for anybody, and if it is, you should seek some help, and hopefully this podcast can offer some. But if it's something more immediate, you should seek out help. And but it really just, I don't know, allowing yourself to understand how your brain works, and knowing that like, okay, well, I'm not happy, and I want to be, and that's something that's really important to me. That can be something alone that's all it takes for you to realize, well, hey, maybe this is worth it. Maybe I should think about how I can be better. Maybe I should take a step back and not do anything self-harming or worse than that. And just allowing yourself to like I'm a guy, and traditionally in American society especially, well, I say especially, but that's the only one I really have any experience with. So I don't really know, but I feel like predominantly, male and masculine culture is you're just supposed to suck it up and deal with it. And you could look at suicide numbers by gender and realize that that's not working out anymore. And it never really did, but people were too kind of pressured by society to follow those standards or those societal pressures. And it's really hard to break out from stuff like that. So I don't really know what kind of shift happened in the last 20, 30 years. I don't know if it's just the advent of the internet or what, but I feel like a lot of people in both genders feel more comfortable talking about the unpleasantries of life. So like I feel comfortable talking about my suicidal thoughts and how I thought about shooting a harpoon gun with a noose around my neck into the ceiling, and that's something that is just so taboo for a lot of people. But being able to admit that you have those thoughts is the first step in realizing like, okay, well, maybe they're a problem. Maybe I can do something. And instead of looking at them and going, well, I need some sort of medication, which you might, and there's no shame in that. But instead of looking at it as saying I need a medication, it could be looking at it and going, well, these are thoughts that I have. What can I do to prevent them or slow them down or have less of them or just have any step in the right direction? It's just allowing yourself to realize that there might be some work that needs to be done there is, I feel like, new to society as of recent. And I think that it's beyond important and something that we can't let die, because I feel like if we really press and give people these outlets and let people find others that are suffering and struggling through the same things, then they might be able to find this sense of community and belonging within the world that you may not get from just your local support system. Because not everybody in my family has struggled with these thoughts, and I'm happy for that, because I don't wish it on anyone. But what that means is within my immediate proximity, like my immediate friends and family, they may not completely understand what I'm going through, but I can go up and find some website somewhere and find this community of people that have struggled through the same thing and have maybe even, more disturbing suicidal thoughts or less so, but all of it require the same kind of attention and merit and affection that they need. And in all of this stuff, it's all really important, but I feel like every lesson I talk about, or every point or whatever I talk about in my podcast, like each episode is something different. They all change into like 8 different topics because I have no sense of focus apparently. But I think that everything that I talk about is somewhat important for everyone. They're just lessons or that people can really learn from, just that I've experienced. And and hopefully you're able to look at some of what's going on in your life and really sit back and think about it and then find ways to help deal with it. And for me, it's taken me a really long time, but what it's recently allowed me to do is kind of go into my everyday life and things that needed done and things that maybe even 6 months ago I wouldn't be able to find any amount of joy in. But this time I was able to sit back and actually find some happiness in what was happening, find some joy in these everyday tasks. And it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to look at different aspects of your life, things that you've had to do in the past. Like I've had to help people move, and I've bitched and moaned the entire time. And I've had to drive long hours just to, to see people. And no matter how much I want to or don't want to see those people, the drive is something that is always it's always been on my mind as this really inconveniencing thing. And, being able to sit back and instead just be happy that I was able to get from point A to point B safely and listen to this music that while I'm at work, I'm not able to listen to music as much. So it's cool to be able to sit back and listen to it. And just finding these little things that even though I don't like driving, especially not long distances, it's really cool to be able to find something in there that I can enjoy. So I finished almost 2 books over the past week, and I couldn't be happier about that. I took some time away from writing, and even though that stresses me out a little bit, even now, I'm happy, and I've come up with a lot of new ideas that I'm excited to pursue once I dive back into it and have more writing time, which will hopefully happen over the next few days. And it's just cool. I think that it's something that I didn't think was going to be important until it started happening to me. I didn't realize how beneficial finding happiness in every single task could be, because it was something that I was never able to do. So instead of focusing on it and thinking about what I could do, I instead just accepted that I was a very pessimistic person and had a really hard time finding this happiness. And I kind of just accepted it as part of who I am. And that doesn't mean that every single unfortunate thing that happens, I'm going to be able to find happiness, because allowing yourself to feel grief or discomfort or, an unpleasantness, that's still important, because you need to understand and be aware of those emotions to help you understand and look for and appreciate the more happy emotions. So I don't know. I guess I'll sum up this episode by saying that finding a way to enjoy stuff that you do every day is really important, because for me, I had a lot of stuff that I always looked forward to, and I still do, in terms of letting myself relax, like writing and doing this podcast, but I can't always do it. I can't do it 24/7. And so not being able to find joy in the other 23 hours of the day, I don't know how much time I spend on this, but I don't spend as much as I would like to on these, but trying to find joy in all the other stuff that I do is really important to help me keep moving forward and keep feeling comfortable existing. Or that's at the far end of the spectrum, where that's something that a more severe thing that it helps me help with. It really helps kind of calm those suicidal thoughts. And then at the same time, it also just helps me feel more comfortable getting out of bed, because, when everything in your day goes from being miserable and beating you down and feeling like you're in a rut, and that transforms into life has all sorts of uncertainties, you never know what's going to happen, you might as well try to enjoy it while you can. It's such a shift that took so long for me to get to, that I'm still struggling with, but it's one that is very, very worthwhile, and one that I have I have enjoyed experimenting with it and kind of existing with that new thought process a lot recently. I think it allows for a lot of growth emotionally, and I couldn't be happier about it. It's not to say I'm always going to be happy and that all these suicidal thoughts are going to disappear, because they're not, but it does help with powering through them when they do come. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. I'm probably going to be done with the whole intro theme. I don't think it adds anything. It's not like I don't know. I think it's dumb. I know that it could be an iconic Like, oh, that's the theme. Yeah, that's acceptable madness. But I don't think that actually adds anything. I feel like if you're coming here for the intro theme, then that's, I think you're missing the point. So, so I think I'm gonna be done with that. I'm still bad at posting on social media, but feel free to follow Acceptable Madness, Facebook, and Instagram. And then hopefully I'll get another video up on YouTube within the coming week or two. And I'm excited to do that too. So I hope you enjoy. I didn't say it at the beginning, but I'll say it at the end. I'm not a doctor, so I guess that's something that I should probably start really getting into the habit of mentioning at the beginning. But I do hope that some of the things that I say can help you anyway. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye.